Okay, it is August 24th. Happy Independence Day to Ukraine. I'm going to go through about 20 articles and I'm going to try to do it in about 10 minutes. So we're going to move very, very quickly. This is from the Institute for the Study of War. These are the occupied territories as of today. And Zeelinski says they all need to be deoccupied before any fighting is going to stop. And I believe he means that. The Institute for the Study of War also gave their assessment today. Minister Sergei Shoigu, the Russian defense minister, said that they were slowing down the pace. He was speaking at a meeting of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. They were going to slow down the pace of the war. Now, that signaled to the ISW that a couple things. Russia's maximalist strategic war aims have not changed. That's really interesting. Like they don't just want these sliced, they want the whole of it. And Sogi's statement may also represent an attempt by the Russian Ministry of Defense to set information conditions to explain their negligible gains, because they really haven't made any gains. If you look at the map in Donbass over the last month, they've taken almost nothing. Now, meanwhile, since their high water mark, Russian forces have lost an area larger than Denmark. That's really interesting to think about. Okay, Zaluni, Valery, he looks a lot tougher than most Valeries I know. Valery Zaluni is the head of the Ukrainian army. He said, "How can one feel independence? Those who fight for it know its taste." And I would assert that right now, Ukrainians are far more aware of the value of independence than even Americans are. Independence has a voice. This is the voice of the ancestors. They died in battle, in gulags, swelled from hunger, laid out on the roads of empires with bones. This is the cry of mothers burying their children. Independence is possible only when there are people ready to fight for it. And he's right, and they are ready to fight for it. Ukraine's Independence Day was always important, and now it's a matter of life and death. The two things I want to highlight here. Even before the full-scale war, Ukrainians' Independence Day was the most important holiday of the year, when we thought not about the death of tyranny and the Soviet Empire, but the rebirth of the state and freedom. Now, Zaluni, I just pointed out, he talked about, I think it was him the other day that mentioned that there were 9,000 casualties. This was the first time it was updated, the casualty rating. Well, there's also 8,000 Ukrainian prisoners of war as of, let's see, as of May 26th. So that number could have increased significantly. I don't know, but 9,000, 9,000, and then you do a multiple of like 3 to get 9. So let's just rough cut 10,000, and then another 3,000. So that's 40,000 casualties, another 10,000 or so prisoners. It's been a painful process for the Ukrainians. Okay, on February 24th, the second referendum of independence of Ukraine actually took place. We always pay tribute to all the fighters for independence, says Zeelinski. On this day, the second all-Ukrainian referendum actually took place. Again, the main question, again, the decisive choice, but this time it was necessary to say yes to independence, not in the ballot, but in the soul of the conscience. According to him, we all change. Someone was born again as a person, individual, citizen, patriot, simply as a Ukrainian. And this, of course, is good news. He says, and we finally became truly one. And I believe he's right. I was looking at a poll. I talked about this yesterday. Go back to yesterday and see what I talked about. Before the war, something like 60-something percent said their national identity was something other than Ukrainian national, and now it's up to 85%, and that's because the war has forged this identity. Not born, but reborn. A nation that didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't get scared, didn't run away, didn't give up, didn't forget. And so Ukraine, if Russia was trying to just wipe out Ukraine, they actually blew them up even bigger and tougher and stronger and more ardent and hardened as Ukrainians. Okay, here is Zeelinski hails the reborn Ukraine. A little bit more about this. February 24th, we were told you have no chance, and that's what I thought on February 24th, and I'm very wrong, and I'm glad I was. On August 24th, we say Happy Independence Day, Ukraine. We finally became truly one, a nation that emerged February 24th at 4 a.m., not born, but reborn. And yeah, I mean, that's just great rhetoric. Ukraine's to receive a $3 billion grant from the United States. The United States has already spent north of $10 billion, and here comes another $3 billion. And they need it. I talked about it yesterday. You can go back and look at that. Permanent representative of Ukraine called on the IAEA, that's the nuclear watchdog, to please send you need a mission, a permanent mission to the power plant so that we can verify what's going on. President Zeelinski, again in Kyiv, says that the Summit of the Future, which is a UN-sponsored activity, he says, let's hold it in Kyiv next year, which I just love the guy's foresight. It would be symbolic to hold this summit in Ukraine, a country where it's being decided whether there will be a future at all. I mean, this guy, I just give him high marks for leadership all the way around. Environmental damage from the war so far, the 6-month mark, is at UAH, that's their hryvnia currency, $395 billion over 6 months. Okay, so what does that mean? That means roughly 10 billion US dollars, more than 10 billion US dollars when you calculate that out. The U.S. State Department put out this really well done overview, Russia's war on Ukraine 6 months after lies. I'm only going to highlight the first quote. Every day we fight so that everyone on the planet finally understands we are not a colony, not an enclave, not a protectorate, not a gubernaria, not an islet or crown land, not a piece of foreign empire, not a part of the land, not a union republic, not an autonomous zone, not a province, but a free, independent, sovereign, and indivisible and independent state. Enough said. Okay, moving on. Russia detains opposition politician for Ukraine war. He said the word invasion. But in Russia, he's getting 5 years for calling the special operation an invasion. I'm not making that up. Go read the article. Okay. Putin orders a $167 handout to parents in occupied Ukraine. $167 is actually 10,000 rubles. So he's going to give every parent who signs their children up for school by September 15th 10,000 rubles as incentive to sign them up. Why? Because there's now a Russian curriculum, and so he's trying to get that inculcated into the students. Okay, meanwhile, in Russia, this was the Russian head of the Ministry of Defense saying what he was saying about how during the special operation, we strictly observe the norms of humanitarian law. That's a lie. The strikes are carried out with high precision weapons. Lie. Armed Forces of Ukraine, command posts, and military complex. They do hit some of those, but they also hit civilians, as they hit at the train station today. At the same time, everything is done to avoid casualties among civilians. Among maybe Russian civilians, but not Ukrainian civilians. Of course, this slows down the pace of the Operation Offensive, but we are doing it consciously. And what he's saying is he's making an excuse for why he's not getting traction, according to the ISW. Okay, last thing. Barely audible Zeelinski dodges Russian response at UN. This is RT, Russia Today, so this is what Russians are seeing in their state media. Ukraine's president addressed the UN Security Council in a crackling video link in a breach of protocol because they're supposed to be there in person, but they overrode it for the second time. And so Zeelinski accused Russia of threatening nuclear disaster at Zaporizhzhia power plant, being responsible for inflation, hunger, high energy prices. He closed his connection before Russian ambassador Velasy Nazibia called out his government and Western backers for being the principal threat to Ukraine's independence. I'm not sure that that quite makes sense, but that's what he said. And then they go on and talk about how bad and awful Ukraine is in the rest of the article. Even not seen since Nazi propaganda, Joseph Goebbels. Okay, so RT is just state-run Russian propaganda, which you can safely ignore, but I highlight here because I want you to understand this is what's going on the other side of the equation. Okay, that's Ukrainian Independence Day. Thank you for your time, and please, if you're listening so far, continue to subscribe. I'm going to be back tomorrow.